Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm very happy to be part of it. I had a long career in sport. It lasted 22 years. I had a fair share of victories. I failed more times than I succeeded. But now that I have exited my investment, so to say, now that I'm retired from sport, I can see things more clinically and more dispassionately. And when I look back at my long time spent in sport, what I really look back
Yeah.
wall in one of the rooms of my house, but what I look back at is the journey that I had. Sport is a wonderful teacher in life. Sport is unique, extremely unique in many ways, because it teaches us how to win. More importantly, it teaches us how to lose. It teaches us how to play by the rules. It teaches us integrity. It teaches us the necessity to work hard. And these are the learnings that I had on the field of play, and the exact learnings what I had on the field of play I take back to my second life now. An athlete's life cycle is very unique, because we almost have two lives. We have our sporting career, which is for a certain period of time, and then post our sporting career we have to start off completely new and completely afresh, uh, in a new way. And that is exactly what I've been doing. And that's exactly what my life has been post the 2016 Olympic Games. And that's what my life has been. And it's been the journey of my sporting career has been something which I look back with a great degree of fondness, and had tremendous learnings in it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, for the introduction. Wonderful to have you as an athlete, as a celebrity for the country, as a real son of India. So my first question I want to know for our viewers is that how do you? What is your opinion? How do you see that? What is the level of impact that COVID-19 has brought in these sports, and how is the sports world is actually handling resuming the activities? How can the sport world come back to normalcy?
Well, it has been tremendously impacted. COVID has impacted everything in life. Sport has definitely not been spared. For the first time in the history of the Olympic movement, and Olympic Games has been postponed. There was a cancellation once due to a world war, and this is only the first time that there has been a postponement of the Olympic Games, which is extremely rare. All Olympic competition and Olympic qualification competition since the period of March has been suspended, and no sporting competitions have been happening ever since that time. And we do not see that sporting competitions, at least Olympic qualifications, will resume at least till the end of the year. Even more than that, what has really impacted athletes is the lockdowns, which have been there in various parts of the world through the various times, have also meant that athletes have not been in a position to train as they normally would be training, which has been a tremendously difficult time for athletes, because athletes live a very active life, be it competing, be it training, and that obviously has come to a complete halt. So it has obviously taken, apart from a physical toll on the athlete and their performance, but I think it has been mentally as well very trying time for the athlete community. But I think the positive part is that the athlete community is probably the most resilient community that I've ever come across in the world, and are taking this situation in their stride. They are acting responsibly as responsible global citizens, in, of course, the containment of the virus as well. All decisions related to sporting activities have been taken with two principles taken into mind. It is the health and the safety of all athletes and all people involved in the whole sporting ecosystem. And the second principle, which is guiding the sport, at least the Olympic world, is being acting in a responsible way for the containment of the virus. Having said that, some time has passed. We've been 4 5 months into this pandemic, and I looking ahead, I don't see this situation changing anytime soon until there is a sustainable solution achieved for this problem. But that also means that life has to, at some point or the other, go on. And when life goes on, sport obviously has an important part, plays an important part in lives of many people. And sporting, and as we've been seeing of late, slowly but surely, sporting action is slowly resuming across the world, be it in a training environment, or be it even in certain countries in a competitive environment. We've had some competitions being held in the US and elsewhere without spectators, and stuff like that. So I think slowly but surely there is people, the sporting world and the sporting community also has to learn to adapt, which we slowly are adapting to the new normal. And that will be the way things will be for a little while, but eventually we all hope that things will come back to normal as they were, and sporting action can resume the way that is, and people, athletes can experience the thrill of sport, as well as spectators who watch sport can go out there and experience the sheer thrill of watching a sporting competition.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned that a lot of countries are coming and resuming sports. What would be your advice, and what do you think? When is the right time to resume sports activity in a country like India? And then, what are the safety nets that we should keep in mind?
Well, obviously, I am definitely not a medical expert to give solid advice. But what I would like to say on this is that we are already seeing certain sporting activity resume in India. We have had um, certain Olympic training camps starting to resume, or are in the process of resumption, in a highly sanitized sort of manner, where only the sporting competition or sporting training is resuming for the Olympic probables or the Olympic team, which will compete in the Olympics, and which will now be held next year. So that, I think, is a welcome sign that under highly sanitized scenario, under strict precautionary measures being taken and undertaken, at least the training of these athletes is starting to happen. And I think that is right. That is the right way to go. At least start the training for the elite level, which is a small number. We are going into Tokyo. We will not have more than 100 odd athletes in all sports taking part. So I think it is definitely possible to make arrangements, safe arrangements, to resume at least training for these number of athletes. Of course, the larger sporting action and the larger bits of training will still take time to resume, as we see the COVID situation, you know, engulfed almost every part of the country. There are certain places where it's going down, but in a lot of places, it's going up. So it is. It will have to. You'll have to. Calls and decisions, I think, will have to be taken depending on the location of athletes, location of the training environments and the training centers, depending what the situation is in that particular city. And I think a single rule cannot apply for the whole country. Um, I think what is important to note is that one will have to have that flexibility to establish those rules, and different cities, different states will have to come up with their own regulations depending on the situation of that particular state or that particular city. But slowly and surely, there are certain sports which are safer than others to resume training. For example, the sport of shooting is a non-contact sport, so there is a fair degree of safety. There is always a distance between shooting athletes, which has always been maintained. That distance can be increased for higher safety measures to be undertaken. So I think those sports will also have to be divided into various categories, and seeing which are safer to resume. And that is, I think, already being done. And I think the Sports Authority of India is taken quite a lead in this whole scenario, and has established certain standing or standard operating procedures, which are being put into play in the various training environments, in the various stadiums, and in the various sports. So, all in all, in conclusion, what I'd like to say is that, sooner or later things will have to resume. Let's start slow. Let's be conservative, but let's make those baby steps towards the resumption of at least training. And once things improve, then one can look at the whole competitive sort of an environment.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we have seen in history that a lot of sports stars have struggled a bit. Now, during the or post-COVID crisis, there are a lot of uncertainties and a lot of athletes are losing motivation. How would they deal with this coming uncertainty and demotivation that is coming to them, and they can recharge themselves to come back now to normalcy?
Well, I think uncertainty is something which is part and parcel of an athlete's career, because we are always uncertain about the eventual result. We never know how competition is going on. An athlete's life is all about adapting to situations. We are always adapting to a very dynamic environment, and certain times in a sporting competition can never be scripted. You cannot break it down into black and white. There is always some variable which comes into the equation which you have not anticipated, and you need that degree of adaptability and flexibility in both technical execution as well as your mindset to be able to overcome those challenges. So I do believe that athletes do possess those skills required to overcome this challenge which the whole world is facing. I think it is we have that mental ability, and we just have to, I think, make it come. We have to make use of the skills required, which we do already possess. I think adaptability is one big thing. I think also the other thing is acceptance. I think when we are in these difficult moments, what normally human tendency is, and which is not just athlete centric, but just human tendency is to resist the situation to a great degree, because it's an uncomfortable position that we are all being put into, and that just makes that cycle worse for us in our own mind. So I think the most important first step is that acceptance in mindset that this is a unique situation that is not just affecting me or you, but the entire world. And with that acceptance, I think it just brings you back, gives you that mental space required to deal with this current situation. But I do feel that I think it's important for athletes to keep their mind focused and their mind sharp. And I think this is a great opportunity to maybe utilize the time which is in hand to maybe pick up a new hobby, or maybe pick up a new skill outside the field of play. Maybe do a short course on something, or maybe pick up something that you've never had the time to do. That's just something which will keep your mind stimulated. It will keep your mind interested in something, and it will not make your mind stale. And I think that is a very important aspect that everybody should be looking at least the athlete community, so that when they eventually do come back to training and competition, which eventually will happen, they do come back with that renewed energy, and they do come back with that renewed hunger to go back to full scale training or full scale competition. But in order to do that, it's very important to keep your mind sharp and your mind fresh in these uncertain and difficult times. And I think the solution there is to maybe find those solutions from outside your regular field of play.
Thank you, sir. I have now a very serious question. You have been like sharing excellent views on all the topics and issues that we are discussing, sir. Little serious question that you have already mentioned that we need to see the positivity out of this picture. Now, certainly there are many athletes and many uh, thinkers are thinking that there can be also a positive outcome out of the crisis that we are into. It. So the new normal that we look forward to see post COVID, can India, I'm clubbing two, three questions. Can India be the world's sports landscape post COVID? If we aim so, then what should be the role of the government post COVID? Because we are certainly observing a disruption. So post disruption, if India has really have to aim to be a really sporting global hub, then what should be the role of government? What should be the role of media? What should be the role of different stakeholders who play active, inactive, direct, indirect part in the game?
Well, I think to make India a sporting powerhouse will require time, and it will require sustained efforts, persistent efforts, determination from all stakeholders involved in running sport, involved in the whole sporting movement in India. To achieve those goals, and the goal can firstly just start from a very fundamental level. We are all so obsessed at times with outcomes, and we are so obsessed with the number of medals that we would want to win. But how do we? Nobody is really talking about how are we going to get there. I think it is all about establishing the right processes, which will get us to us becoming a sporting nation and a sporting powerhouse. And the fundamental start is we need more people to actually just go out there and get involved in a sporting activity. Just we need more people, more of our population, more of our younger population, because we have such a young demographic, to go out there and get involved in sporting activity, not for the sake of winning Olympic gold medals, but just for the sake of playing sport, for the sheer joy of playing sport. When we have families taking to sporting activity as a form of entertainment and as a form of family bonding, and take up sport as a social activity, that is when the real change will be triggered. It will, of course, make our society a more sporting society, and all the great lessons that sport has to offer will filter in down into society and make our sport, our country, and our people a much more sporting people in our mindsets. But it will also eventually lead us to more people getting involved in elite level sport, because we all talk about our large population, but we never ever give out the figures of how many people out of this large population are actually involved in elite level sport. That number is very, very small. So until and unless we don't get that number higher, and we don't give that our people the opportunity to go out and play sport, those are those changes which need to happen. We need to make our grassroots level sport much more stronger in its base. We need to get science and technology filter into our grassroots level, be it for talent identification, be it for training of our athletes, because the world is moving at such a fast pace, and newer ways of identifying talent, newer ways of training athletes are coming into the picture, and we cannot be left behind. So we need all those systems and processes to filter down into our grassroots level systems, and we need to bring together a process which identifies talent at a very basic level, and then find and build a system which nurtures this talent right from a district level up to say an elite level. Those steps and those processes need to be clearly identified and put into place. We often talk about um, people making a big difference in the landscape of Indian sport, but we have to move away from just a good sports minister coming in and making a few good decisions. We have to move away from just a couple of good bureaucrats coming in and making good decisions for sport. What we really need to make is make our organizations and our institutions so strong that it is not dependent on just a couple of good people making these good choices, but those systems and those processes need to come into these organizations, which make the whole system and running of sport much more efficient. It needs to play a greater role in grassroots level sport, and of course, we need to really focus on science and technology. Without the use of science and technology, we will never be able to match our aspirations until and unless we use that science, technology. I call it the STEAM system: science, technology, engineering, analytics, and medicine, and employ that into the running of sport. And make the whole system very data driven. Data is something which gives a huge amount of impetus into and makes us make accountable and more and better decisions. So I think the use of data in all these areas of identifying talent, managing talent will be should be employed. And I think if we are able to build this process right from the big, from grassroots level sport to elite sport, that's where change will be triggered. And this is a long journey which we have to employ. It's not that post COVID will get over and suddenly out with 100 gold medals will come out of her vending machines. That's just wishful thinking. It's a process which will have to be taken forward. A lot of hard work will have to go in. A lot of determination will have to come in. Our sports organizations will have to become much more efficient. Governance is something which has ailed Indian sport for decades. And until and unless we make strong decisions, and until and unless we make committed decisions to improve the governance of Indian sport, things might not change, because governance has a huge impact on the way sport is run. There are many well-meaning people running Indian sport, and I have nothing against any individual. However, I think the whole governance angle is something, uh, there's a lot left to be desired. And I don't see that determination coming into play to really make those difficult changes, because obviously those changes will put people out of their comfort zones. And change is something which is always greeted with resistance. But until and unless meaningful change is not made in the whole governance piece, we will again struggle to match our aspirations. So there are lots of pieces of the puzzle to make India a sporting powerhouse, and that needs a lot of work, a lot of think clear foresight, and committed and persistent um, work that needs to go on for a period of time.
Excellent, sir. There are a lot of positive policy recommendations that came from your last answer, and very elaborately and comprehensively. I have two more questions actually, and then I'll hand over to Dr. Shekhar to take on. One is that, sir, you talked about the role of different stakeholders in the sports. What is the role? What can and should the former Indian sports stars do post COVID to revive and revamp India's sports?
Well, it really depends. I mean, where athletes are placed, I think everybody, athletes post their sporting career have gotten into various different elements. Some are involved in coaching, some are involved in business, some are involved um, in administration of sport. So it really depends on what area your question is referring to. However, I think it is also, I think what the biggest impact for sport has been, what not many people are talking about, are the larger ecosystem which works for Indian sport. People who are working in the stadiums, for example, people who look after the various stadiums, the grounds people. They are all out of jobs. Clubs which are the small clubs which are the feeder system of the whole sporting ecosystem in India are absolutely struggling at this moment to survive, because all sporting action is pretty much halted, and there is absolutely no income coming to this whole ecosystem which surrounds Indian sport. So this is a certainly an area of grave concern, because we don't want the whole sporting ecosystem and one of the big important pillars of the whole sporting ecosystem to suddenly collapse because of the current situation. And I think the athlete community, and also the former athletes can perhaps come together to help this community out in whatever ways they can, because they are a very important element to the whole structure of Indian sport.
Thank you, sir. My final question, though legend Abhinav Bindra don't talk much, does talk much, but I have been able to successfully taking on a lot of points, a lot of recommendations from you, sir. Sir, digital media has risen and brought a complete different direction to the world in making great influence. Now, do you have any suggestions how sport bodies or institutions or policymakers can use or make good use of digital media that can benefit sports?
I think, of course, there is a whole element of broadcasting of through digital means. I think that is one medium which, for certain, is being explored for sure. But I think what one interesting perspective, what I would like to bring in, is the whole um, e-gaming part of sport. Gaming is becoming very huge across the world, but sports organizations can really start a digital version of their sport. And I'm not a big fan of the whole gaming process, but you know that is a reality of our present day generation, that the kids love video games, and there's a huge community which the gaming world enjoys. So I think each sport can really have an e-sport version, which can be a way to introduce the young population to a certain sport. I know a few sports. For example, sailing. The World Sailing Body has started a gaming version of the sport of sailing, and they conduct a gaming world championship. What we are trying to achieve out of this whole process is that a certain percentage of these gamers actually get so involved in this sport and fall in love with that particular sport that they actually start playing that sport in reality. And that is something which I think more sporting bodies across the world, whether we like it or we do not like it, we will be left with no choice but to embrace this whole changing dynamic in the world of sport and the whole gaming element of sport. So I think it is a matter, rather than resisting the whole scenario, it is a matter of using the current situation and the current environment to your actual advantage and to the actual advantage of your sport, for the promotion of your sport.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, any last message or what would be your wish for India in these sports in future? So,
Well, I think I covered a few points already, but I think I would just like to see Indians as a population, as a people, just going out there and playing sport. More and more people should just play sport for the sheer joy of of playing a sport. I think that, to me, is the most important thing. And in case you don't end up playing sport, just go out there and watch sport. I think even just going out there watching sport, even at the basic level, club level, district level, as an Indian, you are making a great contribution to the whole sporting ecosystem. You're making a great contribution to athletes. You are really respecting their art and craft by just going out there and watching sport. And that will be also an important contribution to the whole development of sport in India. So first preference is go out there and play a sport, and if you can't go out there and play a sport, just go out there and watch a sport.